a question addressed to housing. And to begin with, I'd like to read an email that I received from one of my constituents in Methuen, Massachusetts. Quote, I am contacting you as a last resort to what has been a never-ending battle with our mortgage lender, who we feel has tried to get as much money as possible from us before foreclosing on our property. We were offered a mortgage modification if we made a good faith payment of $7,700, which we did. We were approved, but we were told we had to reapply because of missing paperwork. To make a long story short, we reapplied, and after losing our documentation 7 times, they then put us in a trial payment that was $1,200 more than we had been approved for. More recently, we were told that we were sending out a package immediately. They were sending out a package immediately, and I would have it in a couple of days. It has now been weeks with no package and no contact, end of quote. This is not, as I'm sure you know, an unusual story. I have heard from constituents around my district who were given a trial modification through the Home Affordable Modification Program, HAMP, seem to have been strung along during the trial period, have been told multiple times that their documents were lost, have learned that the foreclosure process was never suspended during the trial period, are being denied permanent modifications, and now can't make contact with their servicer. Furthermore, many of my constituents are finding that servicers are reporting them as delinquent to the credit bureaus, even as they are making their trial payments in full and on time. Well, I applaud you for recently announcing proposals to address some of these issues, for instance, requiring documentation before trials are made so that borrowers who could never have qualified for a permanent modification are not given false hope or drained of even more money. I'm concerned that there are still plenty of ways for lenders to exploit borrowers. For instance, there is still no recourse for borrowers when servicers claim to have not received their documentation, and no independent appeals process. My constituents repeatedly tell me that they get no response from their servicers, and when they do make contact, are passed from person to person and division to division within the company, hearing contradictory information at each stage and simple promises such as, we'll send you the paperwork today, that are never kept. So as you're addressing this great challenge, I'm just asking, are you taking any steps beyond the new guidelines to ensure compliance by the servicers? And what would you need to know that you needed to have additional interventions to make what you're trying to do work?
Congresswoman, we hear those stories across the country. It's not unique, as you said, and it is just unacceptable that a crisis caused in part by the fact that we allowed as a country a huge amount of basic fraud and predation to happen across the mortgage market has just caused a huge amount of damage, not just to the people who borrowed too much, but a bunch of people that were completely responsible in their borrowing habits and are suffering for no fault of their own as they see the value of their house decline, their neighbors' homes foreclosed on. And you are exactly right that servicers are not doing enough now to try to make sure that they are getting relief to people who need it fairly and quickly and sensible. And we are going to continue to put enormous pressure on them to do that. Now, you can see today, it's very helpful to see, you can see every month now what's happening to servicer performance, a lot of metrics. So the American people can see which services are doing better, which services are not doing that well. But absolutely there's not been enough progress in this stuff, and we're going to continue to make sure that we are putting enormous pressure on them to get better at meeting the basic needs of their customers. And we are open to any suggestion for how we can do that, and be happy to talk to you in more detail about things we think will be helpful in that process. I just do want to underscore, though, still that 1 million Americans today are seeing very substantial reduction in their monthly payments, and we're seeing very substantial conversion of those temporary modifications into permanent modifications. Now, it's not going to reach everyone who may feel they deserve some help on this front, but it is a very substantial benefit reaching more and more Americans every week, and we are going to continue to work as hard as we can to make sure these servicers are doing the simple, fair thing of treating their customers better, making sure they get the relief they deserve.
Well, we members of Congress are really we're the people that hear first and foremost. I know we have several people in my office dedicated to helping people who are facing foreclosure, and I would say to reach out to all of us to hear, are we hearing more success stories rather than many of this kind of email of absolute frustration, and I know my staff has found that to be the same. So I would suggest
agree with
you reach out to all of us to hear if really what you're doing is working. Thank you very much.
Well, it's working, but it's not doing enough yet, and that's why I said, and we're completely committed to make sure that we are doing as much as we can to reach as many people as we can, and that these services are doing a better job of meeting a simple, basic obligation.
Connie Mack.
Thank you,